My Life by the Books by Kelly Morse. I can still remember climbing into bed every night with my mom as she cracked the spine of a book and began to read. Year after year, we attended Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, as well as befriending Anne spelled with an E in Green Gables. Sometimes we would take shorter adventures with the Jolly Pocket Postman, but we ended every day with a book in bed. Even long after I was too old to be read to, I still enjoyed that special time with my mom and my sister. In my younger years, I read because I saw my sister do it. Not only did she read all the time, but she loved it, and as the younger sister, I wanted to be just like her. Beside the standout of Number the Stars, I did not find my own love of reading until the end of middle school. I always struggled to enjoy assigned reading. It takes the leisure out of reading if I know I have to reach a certain point by a date and prepare to be assessed on the content. Reading quizzes have always been extremely difficult for me, not because I don't know the content, but I just get nervous and freeze. I don't think it's fair that a whole book's content can be summed up into one 10-question quiz, because when I'm invested in a book, that book becomes part of my life. I befriend the characters and enter their world in my dreams at night. So to sum up their life and the importance of the author's work in so few words seems an unjust representation of the piece of art. As I've gotten older and truly only read for leisure, more and more books have affected me this way, because I do have the freedom to choose what I want to read. I fell in love with the love Augustus and Hazel share in The Fault in Our Stars, and I pried into the mind of Holden Caulfield in Catcher in the Rye. I've experienced the oppression of being a woman in Saudi Arabia in Princess, a true story of life behind the veil in Saudi Arabia, and been part of the rescue plan by SEAL Team 6 in Impossible Odds, the kidnapping of Jessica Buchanan and her dramatic rescue by SEAL Team 6. All these different stories have made me want to open a book and turn the pages until I can turn no more. Now that reading is all on my own, I love to read and look forward to holidays and weeks on the beach where I can delve into a story and not have any other cares or responsibilities in the world. I have always been very self-motivated, so my parents never really pushed me to read extra books so long as I was completing my schoolwork, which typically included reading homework every night. So I credit most of my teachers for pushing me to read, but influence as far as what to read came from my parents and friends. Still, anytime my mom reads a good book, she passes it along for me to read. I also tend to pick books off of what is becoming a movie. I think Hollywood has really influenced me as a reader because I try not to let myself see a movie unless I've read the book first, and that's led to many of my book choices over the years. As far as books go, I do not read nearly as much as I wish I could, but whenever I open my computer, I have different articles and websites tabbed that I spend far too much time reading. E-readers have also been a great tool that's led me to read more and more every day. I can have any book I want at my fingertips, and I can have a surplus of books at my hands at all times in a tiny 1-pound device. It's made reading so much more convenient. Not to mention, I can share any book I read with anyone who is logged into my account. Now, whenever my mom has a book she wants me to read, it's already in our Nook library since my whole family has a device. For my family, it has made waiting turns to finish a book obsolete without having to pay for a second copy. My mom, my sister, and I were all able to enjoy Gone Girl at the same time and talk about it as we went on. It is so much more fun to read when you have someone to share the experience and discuss the book with as you hit big key moments. I've always been lucky as a student. I never struggled in school. I had unlimited access to books I wanted either at the library or a bookstore. My mom stayed at home and was always there to help whenever I needed it and read to me every night. I learned to read before I ever began school simply because I was in an environment that fostered learning in my home. As a teacher, this will make it hard for me to relate to some of my students, but it also motivates me to be a cheerleader for my students who do not have that kind of support at home. Even as a math teacher, I know that literacy is important to all of my students. If my students cannot read, it will make learning of any kind difficult. As a math teacher, there's only so much I can do in my classroom every day, but it is my duty to help my students learn to read. I can show them word problems as we warm up, and we can break them down piece by piece and use reading comprehension skills to figure out what the problem is asking us to do. I cannot expect my students to be able to do this without first modeling it for them, but after that, they will be able to do this on their own, which will be an important problem-solving skill as they move forward in the future as students and professionals in the real world. I fear for my students who do not have a strong reading background, because in math there's not much time to teach my students how to read, and I have not been properly trained to teach my students to read. I would struggle with that task, but even as a math teacher, if my students don't know how to read by the time they enter my classroom, it then becomes my responsibility. If they've been passed along this long without being helped, then I can't expect anyone else to do it if I do not take the time to do it myself. Reading is a multi-content task, and every teacher should take responsibility in his or her students' literacy skills.